I wasn't what you'd call remarkable. People didn't stop and stare when I passed. No one asked my name when I stood in line at the deli or the post office or even the bank I visited every Saturday morning like clockwork. Name's Rae Dawson. I'm 39, and I paint houses for a living. Freelance, mostly. Just me and a ladder, a couple of buckets of color, and the same beat-up van I bought off Craigslist 10 years back. Folks in Willow Creek, Indiana, population under 8,000, know me as the Paint Lady. Some of 'em call me that like it's endearing. Others say it like I'm a fixture on a rusting fence. I don't mind. I've always liked being quiet. Unseen. That morning, it was just after 9 a.m. when I walked into town and farm bank with a crumpled brown bag in my arms, folded at the top and sealed with masking tape. My hands were still stained from Thursday's deck job, powder blue under the nails, a rogue smear of ivory on my wrist. I wasn't ashamed. That's what real work looks like. I got in line like I always do. The floors squeaked the same way under my boots, and the same security guard nodded from behind the coffee machine. Every time I come in, I withdraw the same amount. $500, no more, no less. That Saturday was no different. Or at least it didn't start out that way. The guy behind me in line looked like he'd walked out of a cologne commercial, shiny shoes, slick back hair, that I own stock in something I can't pronounce kind of look. He gave a short laugh when I told the teller, 500, please. In 20s and 10s. Big haul painting barns these days? He muttered. I didn't answer. I've learned it's better not to. Let people wonder. Or let them believe what they want. The teller, Sarah, I think her name is, looked up, hesitant. I handed her my ID, and as she verified it, she noticed the bag. I'll just count this out for you, she said politely. I nodded, but before she could slide the bills across, I slipped her a folded piece of paper. If it's not too much trouble, I said, make sure this gets to the right person. She took it like it was a coupon or a thank you note. I didn't say another word. I didn't take the receipt, either. Just tucked the money into the bag, nodded once, and walked out. I didn't look back. Inside, Sarah unfolded the note casually. She was probably expecting a polite request or maybe a tip for good service. But the moment her eyes hit the first line, she sat straight up in her chair. Urgent. If anyone from Division Echo 41 is still active, please transmit code 88 Juliet to the number below. Underneath was a military comms number and a signature, RD. Sarah didn't know what to make of it, but something about it felt heavy, serious. She passed the note to her supervisor, who hesitated just long enough to glance at Ray's departing figure through the glass door. 10 minutes later, they sent the fax. 12 minutes after that, the parking lot filled with 3 unmarked black SUVs. People panicked, of course. This is Willow Creek, not Washington. We don't get more than a deer wandering into the dollar store once a year, let alone military lockdowns. A man in civilian clothes stepped out of the lead vehicle. But he wasn't barking orders or waving weapons. He looked calm, relieved, even. He wore a leather jacket with a small, dark insignia on the lapel, an emblem only a few people would recognize, and fewer still would understand. He stepped up to the counter and asked in a voice that cut clean through the whispers, who sent the transmission from this branch? Sarah raised her hand slowly. I did. She gave me a note. He nodded and gently laid a sealed envelope on the counter. Ma'am, he said, the woman you just served is the reason 23 soldiers made it home from a compromised training op in 2014. We've been trying to find her ever since. The man at the counter introduced himself as Major Eli Grant, U.S. Army, Special Recon Division. Tall, composed, and with a presence that quieted the room without raising his voice. He held up the envelope like it was sacred. I've waited almost 11 years to deliver this. The entire bank had gone silent by then. People froze mid-transaction, kids stopped fidgeting, even the guard by the coffee machine stood with his hand halfway to his mug. Sarah, still shaken, said, I don't even know her last name. She never really talks. Just shows up. Grant gave her a soft smile. Her name is Rae Dawson. She's the civilian who saved my team's lives on March 18, 2014. We called it Operation Wintergale. But unofficially, we just call it the night the arrows showed up. He turned, his voice projecting slightly, as if speaking to the room now, not just the staff. We were conducting a night raid simulation outside of Owens Ridge, remote, forested, dead radio zones in every direction. Someone fed bad coordinates to our GPS grid, and we ended up nearly 3 miles off course, in a restricted test zone owned by a defunct mining corporation. That zone, unknown to us, was full of exposed sulfur dioxide tanks and underground storage units with God knows what left over from the Cold War. He paused. His eyes were far away, somewhere else entirely. It wasn't a simulation anymore. Not when that first tank ruptured. He shook his head like he still couldn't believe it. We were blinded by fog and gas, radios scrambled, one guy coughing up blood within minutes. The second we realized the mistake, we tried to backtrack, but the paths looked the same. Trees, mud, fog. The kind of night where your own breath disappears before your eyes. We were walking toward death, every step. Now it was dead quiet in the bank. And then, he continued, we saw the first arrow, spray-painted in bright white, right on the tree bark. He reached into his coat and pulled out a weathered photo, old, grainy, and clearly taken in terrible conditions. But there it was. A single, unmistakable white arrow, pointing left. We thought it was graffiti, he said. Then we saw another one, this time on a rusted oil drum. Then another, on a pile of firewood. All fresh, all wet, and all pointing in the same direction. Major Grant leaned on the counter, lowering his voice. Someone had seen us. Someone had watched long enough to know where we needed to go. And that someone had painted us a road out of hell. A woman near the entrance gasped softly. We followed those arrows, he said. All 24 of us. One didn't make it. Sergeant Nolan was already too far gone by the time we got him out. But the rest of us? We lived. And we never found the person who saved us. Sarah whispered, so, it was Rae? He nodded slowly. We only had 2 details. The arrows were painted with a brand of contractor white only sold locally. And a footprint was found, women's size 8. Our best guess was a painter working a private contract on one of the cabins nearby. But by the time our people canvassed the area, the site had been abandoned. All we found was a note, nailed to the door. He pulled it from the envelope and unfolded it carefully. Didn't know who you were, just saw the mess. Hope you made it out. Don't need thanks. Just get home safe. Artie. He looked back at Sarah. She used the same initials today, and the same fax code. We matched it to our field records within minutes. Someone in line cleared their throat and asked hesitantly, but why come forward now? Grant exhaled slowly. That's the part that gets me. Yesterday, someone posted on a private veterans forum that Echo 41 had lost 4 members this year, claiming delayed complications from chemical exposure. The post was false, but believable enough to spread like wildfire. He held up his phone, showing a grainy still image from a security camera of Rae in her canvas jacket, stepping into the bank that morning. We think she saw the post, thought we were dead, and decided maybe it was time to check. Sarah asked, what about the money? Why $500? Grant tapped the envelope. After we got her name, we pulled what we could from public databases. She's been sending anonymous money orders, always $500, to the widow of Sergeant Nolan. Every month for 10 years. Untraceable until now. People in the room exchanged glances. The man who had smirked at Rae earlier now looked like he wanted to crawl into his own briefcase. She did all that, Grant said, and never once wanted to thank you. Another woman near the window whispered, where is she now? Grant's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, nodded once, and said, she's at the hospice outside town, paying her mother's admission fees. He turned to leave, then stopped. We'll find her. And this time, she's not walking away without the recognition she deserves. He paused in the doorway. And if she tries, we'll paint her arrows back home. By the time the convoy rolled into Oak Hollow senior residence, the sky had shifted to that kind of soft gray Indiana gets before a spring rain, the kind that hangs in the air like a held breath. Major Grant stepped out first. He wasn't wearing his badge anymore, just a plain gray jacket and a folded letter in his inside pocket. Behind him walked 2 members of his old unit, retired now, but still carrying the weight of that night in every step. They entered quietly, not making a scene. No press, no ceremony. Just 3 men looking for the woman who once left them a trail out of a fog they never would have survived without her. The receptionist, a college kid named Maddie, blinked at them as they approached. Visiting someone? Grant gave her a gentle smile. We're looking for Rae Dawson. Room 214. Maddie nodded, surprised. She's here. Just signed her mother in this morning. Paid the full deposit up front. Took her a while to count it out. It was all cash. Said it was from garage painting jobs. She inside with her mom now? Maddie nodded again. Hasn't left her side since they arrived. Seemed like. I dunno. She was afraid if she stepped away, it might all vanish. Grant looked down, then glanced back at the others. She always was like that. They approached the door quietly. Inside, Rae was sitting in a vinyl chair by the window, the brown bag still folded neatly at her feet. Her mother, a frail woman with snow-white hair and paper-thin skin, slept peacefully in the bed beside her, her breathing soft and shallow. Rae was staring out the window at the courtyard garden, lost in a silence only certain kinds of people understand, the kind earned through years of holding yourself together when no one else could. She heard the knock but didn't turn around. "Give me a minute," she said, without looking. "It's been more than 5,000 of them," Grant replied gently. She froze. Her head turned slowly, eyes widening as she recognized him. Not from the past, they'd never met that night, but from the photo in the paper. From the way he stood. From the badge sewn into the inside of his coat, just visible now as he stepped closer. She stood up, hesitantly. "I didn't do it for this," she said. "I didn't come forward. I just needed to know." "I know," he said, nodding. "But sometimes doing the right thing still deserves a knock on the door." They stood like that for a second, two people bound by an invisible thread of history, and then Grant reached into his pocket and unfolded the same note she had faxed. "I brought something for you," he said, handing her a second envelope, much older, the paper slightly yellowed with time. Inside was a single-page letter. Rae unfolded it slowly. "To the person who painted the path. I don't know your name, and maybe I never will. But I want you to know, I lived. We all did, because of you. If I ever find you, I'll shake your hand. And if I don't, I'll tell this story for the rest of my life. Sergeant Nolan, Echo 41. She read it twice. Her eyes stayed dry, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the page. "I didn't know he wrote that," she murmured. "We never showed it to anyone," Grant said. "We weren't sure you'd want it. But now, I figured you ought to have it." There was a long silence. Her gaze drifted toward her mother again. "I come here every month," she said quietly, "to cover the room. The meds. She doesn't know me anymore. Not really. But I told myself, if she's warm, fed, and safe, then maybe that means I'm not completely gone either." Grant nodded. "And the 500? Every month?" "To Sergeant Nolan's widow." Rae shrugged. "Just seemed like the right thing. He didn't make it. I did." Someone had to carry the load forward. The other two men stepped in then. One of them, tall, gray-haired, and wearing a service pin on his lapel, offered her a small wooden box. She took it with shaking hands. Inside was a neatly folded American flag and a brass plaque engraved with her name. Rae Dawson. Civilian Support Commendation. Operation Wintergale. Code 88, Juliet. For direction, when direction was needed most. Rae stared at the plaque for a long time. Then she closed the box slowly and looked back at Grant. "I don't want a medal," she said. "I want people to stop assuming the worst when they see someone with pain on their clothes and calluses on their hands." He smiled. "Too late for that. Word's already spreading." "What word?" Grant pulled out his phone, showing her a still from the bank camera, her stepping out with the bag, unaware of the entire chain of events she triggered. Beneath it was a trending tag from a military forum, #500 for honor. "People are talking," he said. "And not just about that day. About every quiet act that never made the news." Rae sighed, half amused, half annoyed. "I didn't ask for any of that." "You didn't have to," Grant said. "Sometimes the world finds a way to thank you whether you like it or not." He paused. "Besides," he added, "you gave us arrows. We figure it's only fair we point one back to you." After they left, I sat there for a long time in that stiff vinyl chair. My mother's soft breathing was the only sound in the room, and I found myself running my fingers along the edges of the plaque like it might disappear if I blinked too long. I hadn't planned for any of this. The note, the money, the memory, that was all supposed to be quiet. Simple. Private. But the world doesn't work like that when the story leaks out. By Monday morning, people in Willow Creek were acting strange. Friendly, sure, but off, somehow. A couple of folks nodded to me on Main Street. A teenager at the hardware store paid for my sandpaper before I could reach for my wallet. The bank teller, Sarah, gave me a little smile when I stepped in to deposit some cash from a porch job I'd wrapped up over the weekend. She didn't say anything, but there was something different in her eyes. Recognition. Like she'd been seeing me for years and finally looked past the smudges of paint. Then came the calls. And emails. And letters. A guy from the Pentagon left a voicemail. Said there was an invitation with my name on it. Some fancy recognition ceremony in D.C. I deleted it. An online military journal requested an interview. Declined that one, too. But the strangest part? People started sharing stories. One by one. Like my note had flipped a switch somewhere. A widow in Pennsylvania posted about an anonymous neighbor who'd shoveled her driveway every winter since her husband died in Afghanistan. A vet in Texas wrote about a nurse who used to sit with him during his worst pain and never once asked for thanks. Even folks in town, people I'd painted for, started chiming in. Turns out, kindness leaves footprints, even if you try to sweep them away. But I didn't want the spotlight. I never had. I kept to my routine: porch to paint, room to freshen, deck to stain. Still walked to the bank every 15th, still carried the same paper bag with the top rolled twice and taped shut. And yet, things didn't go back to normal. They got better. About 2 weeks after the bank incident, I was working on a sunroom out on Valley Lane, pale sage walls, fresh trim, easy job. A car pulled up, and I recognized the driver instantly. The guy in the suit. The one from the bank. The one who'd smirked when I withdrew the cash. He stepped out slowly, like someone approaching a grave or a confession booth. He started. I was hoping I could talk to you. I didn't say anything. Just kept brushing that top edge near the ceiling. He tried again. My name's Caleb. I didn't realize who you were. That day, I was being a jerk. Yup, I said, not looking down. My son, he continued, voice a little shaky, enlisted last week. Combat medic program. When he told me, I thought about what you did, and I realized. I didn't even say thank you. I stopped painting, turned to him. You don't owe me anything. He shook his head. I know. That's what makes it worse. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. I don't have anything you need, he said. But on the back's a number. It goes directly to Major Grant. He said you'd know what that means. I took it without a word. Then I handed him my card. A wrinkled, paint-speckled rectangle that simply read, R. Dawson, interior and exterior painting. Reliable. Affordable. No fuss. He read it, then smiled. You're still taking jobs? As long as people still got things that need painting. Later that night, I stopped by the Veterans Rehab Center across town. They'd been asking for help freshening up the old art room. I figured I'd offer. Place was quiet when I arrived, just a few folks sitting at a long table, sketching. I walked in with the $500 I hadn't spent that month and handed it to the coordinator. For supplies, I said. Maybe add some color to the place. They didn't ask questions. Just nodded. As I turned to leave, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. Along the far wall, someone had started painting thin, crisp strokes of white, pointing upward. Arrows. 23 of them in a row. Each one hand-done, uneven, but beautiful in its own way. I asked who started it. The coordinator smiled. One of the guys said he heard about what you did. Said if arrows could lead soldiers out of a fog, maybe they could lead someone out of the dark in here, too. I just stood there for a moment, staring at those arrows. I hadn't told anyone. I never painted those myself. But someone knew. Someone understood. The next morning, I found something waiting on my front porch. 23 cans of white paint, stacked neatly in a pyramid. No note. No sender. Just a silent offering. I stared at them, heart heavy. Then I got to work. I used the paint to create a mural on the side of the local VFW hall. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just a series of white arrows, each pointing toward the sky, arranged like a compass rose, reaching outward in every direction. When someone asked what it meant, I just said, direction. When direction is needed most. After I finished that mural, something changed in Willow Creek. It was like the whole town took a long breath, held it for a while, and finally let it out. People didn't ask me a lot of questions, which I appreciated. But they noticed. They slowed down, looked a little longer, said thank you more often, not just to me, but to each other. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. But it was real. That VFW wall? The one with the arrows? It became a kind of gathering spot. Not a shrine, Lord knows I didn't want that. But a place people started using for reflection. Veterans sat there with coffee. Teenagers took photos. Parents brought their kids and explained what direction could mean in a world that often forgets how lost we all are. And still, I painted. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was peace. But something about brushing color onto a weathered wall made the noise of everything else go still. But the noise did come, just not from me. One day, a reporter showed up while I was power washing a fence off Old Sawmill Road. He was young, clean notebook, eager eyes. Told me his name was Jordan Carlisle. Said he was writing a human interest piece for a national publication, some glossy thing people read on airplanes. I don't do interviews, I said flatly, not even pausing. But people should hear your story. They already have. They just don't know it's mine. He hesitated. Don't you think people need to know who helped those men? What kind of person does something like that and walks away without a word? I finally looked at him. The kind of person who didn't do it for applause. He didn't argue, just nodded, jotted something in his notebook, then left. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, that glossy magazine hit shelves. The cover didn't have my face. Thank God. But page 12 had a feature titled, The Arrow Painter of Willow Creek. The story was written with care. No speculation. No digging. It never named me outright. But it told the story of a woman, anonymous, unnoticed, who led 23 soldiers to safety using white paint, then disappeared into a life of quiet labor. It mentioned a bank, a note, a monthly donation, but it never betrayed me. And it did something else, too. It invited others to speak. In the days after it ran, the VFW wall filled with little notes, handwritten scraps, tucked beneath rocks or taped to the bricks. Some were from soldiers. We had someone like you in Fallujah. Never got his name. Still think about him. I didn't know arrows could save people. Mine came in the form of a nurse who never stopped humming. Some were from civilians. My brother came back different. This story gave me a way to talk to him. I want to help someone, even if no one remembers my name. And then, one morning, tucked beneath a white tulip at the base of the mural, I found a folded note that nearly undid me. I was Nolan's widow. I always wondered who was behind those checks. Thank you for honoring him more than I ever could. I didn't cry. I just sat there on the sidewalk in my old jeans and canvas jacket, paint still drying under my fingernails, and let the silence wash over me. Things got busier after that. The local bank, the one that used to barely glance at me, quietly launched a veterans donation fund. No big posters. No marketing campaign. Just a simple sign near the teller windows. HF Fund, for those who guide without glory. I never asked what HF meant, but I had a guess. Donations started rolling in, from businesses, from families, from kids donating allowance money in envelopes with crayon hearts on them. One day I was painting a detached garage on Birch Street when the teller, Sarah, stopped by on her lunch break. She handed me a paper-wrapped package. Inside was a tiny can of white paint, like the kind you'd use for a dollhouse, and a note. So everyone has a chance to be seen as good. I didn't say a word, just nodded, then got back to work. A month passed. The donations covered 2 years of care at the senior residence for my mom. When I went to make the usual payment, the administrator smiled and handed my check back. It's been handled, she said. I didn't ask who did it. I had a feeling. Instead, I used the $500 to buy brushes, sketch pads, and paints for the rehab center. Delivered them in silence. Just left them by the front desk with a note. Because hands that create don't forget how to heal. Not long after, I got a call. This time, I answered. It was Major Grant. I wanted to let you know, he said. We finally finished the installation. What installation? He hesitated. The arrows. At Fort Kennison. We put up a mural. 23 white arrows. Leading toward the sunlight. He paused. Your note's there, too. The one you left on the cabin door. I didn't know what to say. You ever come through D.C., he added. There's a seat at our table. No pressure. Just a place where people remember. I thanked him. I hung up. Then I went out back, pulled out a fresh can of paint, and started on a new fence. Because that's what you do. You keep painting. Keep building. Keep pointing the way forward. Even if no one's watching. Even if they never know it was you. I was rolling primer on the north wall of the Thomas place when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer anyway. Miss Dawson, a woman asked. Yeah. This is Captain Lee Park, 3rd Recon. I served under Major Grant. I was one of the 23. My roller stopped mid-stroke. She continued. I wanted to say thank you. Not on behalf of the Army. Just from one person to another. I had a baby 6 months after that op. She's 9 now. Wouldn't be here if it weren't for a stranger with a paintbrush. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say much. But that call hit different, because it wasn't part of the noise. It wasn't a news story or a donation or some hashtag. It was just one voice. Sincere. Grateful. Human. She hung up after a minute. But the silence after she left stayed with me for hours. Like something inside had shifted. I finished painting that wall slower than usual. Like each stroke mattered just a little more. A few days later, it rained hard. The kind of steady, soaking Indiana rain that seeps into your boots and your bones. I was packing up after a porch job when I saw a familiar figure standing at the edge of the driveway, umbrella closed, clothes soaked. It was Caleb, the banker from the line, the one who'd laughed that day. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes low. Then he got his orders. "My son, ship's out next week." I didn't say a word, just waited. Caleb stepped forward and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a snapshot, his son in uniform, smiling nervously. On the back, scribbled in Sharpie, "If he ever needs anything, this is the number. Ask for Major Grant." He cleared his throat. "You said if someone needed direction, that's the number, right?" I nodded. He looked me in the eye then, really looked. "I judged you. I saw paint and calluses and thought I saw your whole story." I shrugged. "You're not the first." "No," he said quietly, "but I hope I'm one of the last." Then he turned and walked back into the rain. The next time I stepped into the bank, everything felt different. Same chip tile floors. Same soft hum of the ceiling vents. But the stares were warmer. Quiet nods, not glances. Sarah the teller smiled, not the plastic kind, but real, respectful. I filled out the slip. $500. Same as always. As I waited, I noticed something behind the counter. Taped discreetly near the monitors, small enough not to draw attention, but visible if you knew to look, was a photo. It was me. From the bank security camera. Paint-stained hands. Paper bag tucked under my arm. No label. No caption. Just a reminder. Sarah handed over the cash in 10s and 20s, like she always did. "Glad to see you," she said. I nodded, slipped the bills into the bag, and turned to leave. But before I got to the door, the manager stepped out of his office. "Miss Dawson," he asked. "I just wanted to say, thank you." I paused. "For what?" "For showing us how wrong we were." I didn't reply, just nodded and walked out into the sunlight. A week later, I visited the VFW hall again. I hadn't planned to. Just found myself walking that way after finishing a job out by the high school. Something pulled me there. The mural, the 23 white arrows, was still intact, still clean. But now, someone had added a 24th. Not pointing out, pointing back. Below it, a small plaque had been installed. For the one who didn't walk away, but made sure others could. No name. No fanfare. Just quiet truth. An older vet stood nearby, arms crossed. I didn't know him. "You paint this?" he asked. I gave a small nod. He looked at the arrows. Direction matters more than destination sometimes. Then he said something that stuck with me. Heroes don't always lead from the front. Sometimes they walk alone behind everyone else, making sure no one gets lost. I didn't reply, but I stayed a while. Just stood there, watching the shadows shift as the sun dropped behind the trees. It was the first time I ever saw people take photos of something I painted and not erase me from the story. The last Saturday of the month came quiet and warm. No headlines. No SUVs. Just birdsong, the smell of cut grass, and a fresh can of primer rattling in the back of my van. I stopped by the nursing home first. Mom was having a good day, not all there, but calm, humming something from the 1950s as I trimmed her blankets. I left the room quietly, same as always. Then I went to the bank. Cash slip. $500. Same bag. Same nod from Sarah. No words needed. Only this time, she reached under the counter as I turned to go. "There's something for you." It was a package. Small. Wrapped in brown craft paper and string. Inside, a wooden box. Inside that, a letter, handwritten in tight, neat script. "You saved 23 lives. But more than that, you reminded the rest of us that doing the right thing doesn't need a stage or an audience. This is not a medal. This is a marker, a reminder that arrows matter. Especially the quiet ones." Beneath the note was a tiny metal pendant, shaped like a paintbrush. The bristles formed an arrowhead, pointing up. I traced its edge with my thumb. Let the silence hold. Then I drove. Not to a job. Not to the VFW. To a trail outside town, the one that ran along the river bend where wildflowers still grew thick. I found a wooden post, half-rotted and leaning sideways, probably once part of an old sign or property marker. I pulled out the paintbrush from my satchel. White. Clean. I knelt. And I painted one more arrow. Just one. No name. No message. Just direction, when direction was needed. Then I stood, took a long breath, and walked away.